So I've got my celebratory Wizards hat on because we're very happy that Causal Map Limited has been, I think, just about exactly 5 years in existence, and we're now on version 4 of the Causal Map software. So today is the day where we actually launch it, and it's available for anyone. And so that's, of course, a celebration. So we've got celebratory, I'm wearing a celebratory hat, and we've got celebratory background. So I hope everyone feels very welcome. We were going to have like champagne or something. Oh, you've got, is that champagne, Gabriele?
No, this is tea.
Celebratory
tea.
Yeah. Yeah, let's wait another minute. So this is being recorded. People don't get a thing to say they are sent to being recorded, I don't think. But so we should perhaps just point out here that the meeting is being recorded, and we'll make that recording or a version of it available in the next few days, along with lots of other resources that, in fact, you can see right now, I think, on the screen, there's a QR code there you can scan, and that helps you to get the presentation itself. So you can, all the links that we mentioned, there are quite a few of them, you can use that to access those links, like bibliography and help pages and that kind of thing. Right, so I think we'll start.
Yeah.
Yes, so if you have questions, just put them in the chat, please, and we'll possibly answer them as we go along, or possibly at the end, depending on how it best fits. But we'll certainly have some where we were taking my hat off. We were planning this would last no more than an hour, possibly a little bit less, and we'll make sure to leave some time for questions at the end. And feel free to put questions in the chat or save them to the end, however you like. Or
a suggestion here, Steve, if someone has a very burning question while Steve is doing the demo, just feel free to raise your hand. Yes. And ask the question live.
Great, thank you. So do you want to move to the next one? So Gabrielle is moving it along.
Yeah.
I'm just going to present a few slides. I'm going to present some. So yeah, so Causal Map Limited, we're a micro business based near Bristol in the UK. We have two products. One is the Causal Map app, which is what we're celebrating the relaunch of today. And the other one is Qualia Interviews, which is kind of the data in part, which is an AI interviewer for collecting stories in an interview format, a conversational interview format. The two apps are relatively unconnected. You can use the one without the other. But today the focus is on Causal Map. And of course, what we really do in terms of making money, we hope, is providing consultancy services around using the apps and or causal mapping in general. So yeah, there's 4 of us. Fiona Remnant and James Copestake are good colleagues and friends from Bath SDR, and partly from University of Bath. And it was via interaction with them that we partly came up with the Causal Map software as a way to make sense of lots of narratives from the use of the qualitative impact protocol. And Gabriele won't be physically with us very long in the UK, Gabriele.
Yeah, I'm the outreach coordinator at Causal Map. I have been with Steve for the past, it will be 3 years in January now. And I will be moving back to Brazil next month, but we'll still work with Steve remotely. Yes.
Great. So there's, again, that's the same link to this presentation. There's lots of links here for our email addresses, and we've got more free sessions like this coming up, which will be a lot more sort of practically in terms of which button do I click. And there's a form there you can sign up to be notified about that. There's the LinkedIn page and the guide to Causal Map and causal mapping, and our main website and our newsletter and a bibliography if you're interested in some academic publications and reports on and around causal mapping.
Yeah, and I've posted all of these links in the chat as well if anyone's interested.
Thanks. So today we'll do a little bit about causal mapping, what it is, but I think about slightly more than half the people here are a little bit familiar or very familiar. And we'll talk more about Causal Map 4 and what's different about it and why we think it's so great, and a couple of tips and tricks during that, and then time for questions. So next one, please. So what is causal mapping? It's not a new thing. It's been around for about 50 years, since the 1970s. It's been used a lot in lots of different disciplines like management science, organizational sciences, ecology, a little bit in project evaluation, not so much. It's based on the idea of just mind mapping, really, sort of mind mapping what links to what, but in causal mapping, what's special is what causes what. So you make like a mind map, but what causes what, or at least what in somebody's opinion causes what, because the other special feature of causal mapping, at least the way we do it, is that we don't make like a consensus map where everyone thinks. We're interested in what individual sources, could be reports or mostly people, interviewees, what everyone thinks that might be different from one another. And so we record all of that as a causal map. So for example, if person P at the top left thinks that B maybe causes C and C influences E and so forth, and on the right, Q thinks no, E causes C and F causes no, and D causes F. You can map them in that kind of box and arrow format. You can map those beliefs, and then you can join them together. So there's two maps overlaid, and that's already like a multi-source causal map, which you can analyze in lots of interesting different ways. So it's like qualitative data analysis, like NVivo or something, but it's natively causal. So in ordinary qualitative data analysis, there's a couple of ways of doing causation. You can simply, as in the first example, just highlight floods destroyed our crops, and that's just a causal link. But the causation doesn't mean anything. It's simply tagged as it's a causal link. Or you can maybe highlight the floods as a sort of a tag and highlight destroyed our crops as a sort of a tag, and then join them up later in some kind of the same software, different software, to make some kind of network diagram. That's not what we'd call natively causal. Natively causal QDA, you highlight floods destroyed our crops and immediately say what's the cause and what's the effect. So the coding unit in causal QDA is a causal connection. You don't code anything else. So everything you do is coding causal links between lots of causes and lots of effects. So the next one, please. So the end of doing that kind of causal coding is, you can see, what you can't see, there's hundreds or thousands maybe of these labels, these causes and effects, and they're all linked up by these green arrows. There's trillions of them, you can't see them. Not very useful on its own. It's a kind of a graph database of causal opinion or causal evidence. But you can take that database and you can filter it, for example, like this. This is a very top level kind of filtering of exactly the same map, showing just, in this case, just these three, maybe most important factors, most frequently mentioned factors, saying that lots of different kinds of capacity building activities, both led to advocacy activities, but also influenced by advocacy activities. And you can find out an awful lot just by looking at this map, just with this highly filtered map, just with three boxes. Look at the quotes, look at the evidence in each case, or what caused what, and exactly who said what caused or led to or influenced what. That's what we call a knowledge graph, or a causal knowledge graph. Now, causal maps are a bit special, and sometimes like systems type people get irritated because they say, oh, this isn't really causation, it's someone's opinion about causation. We say, yeah, it's exactly what it is. So we're mapping people's opinions about causation, which is obviously not the same thing as we don't claim necessarily that's what really does cause what. It's very interesting to marshal and to synthesize all of that evidence, and Causal Map app can help you to organize that and to present it in a certain way, so you can look at all the evidence that something, or the claims that something causes something else, and then it's your job as researcher in the end to say, well, I think that is enough to say that probably there is an influence here of X and Y. But more often you're simply interested in knowing what people think, because in lots of areas of social programming, for example, it's very important to know what people think drives what, even if it's not true. So you wouldn't use causal mapping if you're not interested in the individual sources. You just want to get an expert consensus from the get-go. If you've only got a little bit of data, You can maybe just use PowerPoint or something to join everything up. Or very importantly, if you've got just a couple of high stakes causal links, like does this medicine cause this symptom to go away, then you wouldn't do causal mapping, you'd do something else. Yes. So the kinds of questions you can answer with causal mapping, in just general social research, can be exploratory. Just for example, what do people think about this? We've done stuff, for example, on what do people think are the problems facing America right now, and how does that change over the months and years? Or you can do it theory-driven, saying, starting from this theory, how can we understand what people are thinking? But it's been used a lot, in project evaluation, so impact evaluation, what is possibly really driving this outcome, and also for measuring systems change. So an example would be, supposing you already have a theory of change, you're evaluating a program, and you want to know, does our intervention somehow contribute to the key outcomes? So you've done a lot of causal mapping. It's deductive causal coding because you've already got a code book. The code book is the theory of change, the theory of the program. And maybe you've got hundreds of links from maybe hundreds of interviews or dozens of interviews. And this is maybe a top-level map where you see that items that are more or less from the theory of change of the program, maybe slightly tweaked, give you kind of very top-level view of how the program was perhaps working. But you might want to say, yeah, but could you just go back there, Kevin? So you might want to say, okay, so I've got received training from some organization and we're hoping that improves health, but there's a lot of other stuff going on there. I'd like to look just at the evidence that this training impacted health. So I can do what we call path tracing, one of many different sophisticated filters we have dedicated for this kind of purpose. We can say, show me just each and every path that goes from the training to these two outcomes about improved health. And you can do all kinds of clever things like saying, show me only paths which were mentioned in their entirety by a single source, and that kind of thing. It's quite similar to what's done in the qualitative impact protocol. So yes, and then you can look at the underlying text. You can look at each and every text behind each and every link and say where exactly those claims coming from. Okay. So is that a bit like NVivo? People often ask us, yeah, it is very like in NVivo in some ways, in the sense that you're looking at texts and coding them up. And some people say, well, could I do all of my coding in causal map? Well, you can. If a theme, like sometimes people just say, oh, there's unemployment or there's more unemployment without that being a causal claim about anything explaining it. So you could, yeah, code employment in the causal map as kind of something that, let's say, causes itself or is caused by nothing. And I would do this if I was coding, if my project was essentially a causal project. I don't think I'd use causal map, the app, if I was just doing thematic coding or grounded theory type work, if I didn't have a specific causal focus. That's what causal map is for. But otherwise, they're quite comparable in some ways. Right, so the version of causal map, which was kind of the current one until yesterday, was causal map 3, and Gabrielle is going to tell us about the differences between that and what we've got now.
Yeah, right. So with causal map 3, we had a more rigid structure when we talked about files or projects, sources, and statements. So when you uploaded a document into causal map, the app would automatically transform it into a spreadsheet. So it was usually easier to just upload data as a spreadsheet if you wanted to customize the source information or anything in your text. Also, when you uploaded the documents to a file in causal map 3, it was considered as a source. It still does that in causal map 4. And the app would split the source into smaller chunks of text, which we call statements. And we don't do that with causal map 4 right now. We have a much simpler and more intuitive structure. We call the old files projects now because it makes more sense. And sources. So what we call when the texts are uploaded into the app, they aren't split into smaller chunks statements. The text that you upload into causal map 4 now is complete, and you can see the sources text on the left side panel of the app. And you can customize your sources information directly from the app without having to round trip, which is when you download the Excel sheet from the app edit the information in the Excel and upload it again to Causal Map, which was very time consuming and a bit clunky. Second, we built the app focusing on performance and for multiple people to work at the same time, so for teams. So in Causal Map 3, you could share your files with your team members, and but the app was a bit slow, and it really struggled with low, like poor internet connections in larger projects. So Causal Map 4 is now much faster and a lot much more resilient than before, so you can work in poor internet connections, and it's designed for many users at once. So with the team subscription that we'll talk about later, you can work with live collaboration just like you would do with Google Docs, for example. And we also improved the way that we create the maps in the app. So we moved from just printing the map with static images to having fully interactive maps. So it makes the analysis and also presenting your findings to stakeholders much more dynamic. And also you can edit or tailor the way that your factors, your labels appear in the map to fit with your tier of change, for example. So it's very cool. And we also have many new features that Steve will show you. Right, so talking about the new subscription plans, comparing to Causal Map 3, in Causal Map 3, we did have 3 different subscription plans, and we also have 3 different ones in Causal Map 4, but they are very different. The old free plan was just a small demo. So with Causal Map 4, we are giving away unlimited use for public projects. And this is a big part of our commitment to supporting the research community, like open data and students as well. And our pricing is very low at the moment, so it's very much cheaper than the old pricing. So our old subscriptions, they ranged for £39, which was the small subscription, to £149 monthly to the unlimited one. Now our highest subscription is priced at £39, and our lowest one is £9. So it's much cheaper and more affordable as well for students or Global South researchers. Yes, so we also focused on making the AI less expensive as well. So before we had special subscriptions for people that wanted to use AI, and now we can just add add-ons to our subscriptions. It doesn't matter which one you have, and we'll talk more about the features soon. So I'm just gonna skip these. If anyone has a question about that, we can go back to the specifics of the plans later. And Steve, it's with you now.
Great, thanks. So the key thing to take home from that is that you can use Causal Map 4 for free with unlimited projects, with unlimited amount of data, providing you with the core functionality, not all of it, but you can really use it. The only thing is that your work is then public, so in principle, someone could look at it. And if you want to, if you don't want that, then the smallest subscription is paid subscription. It's the private subscription, which is just £9 a month, which means you can keep all your data to yourself. So I'm going to present. So resume presenting. So now hopefully, yes, you can see Causal Map 4 itself. So, I mean, there's lots of features. We're super excited and like, oh, how can we even explain it to you without getting too excited and getting lost in all the fun things you can do. So basically what we've got here is the kind of file you will get yourself, a copy of yourself when you log into Causal Map. You'll see something like this. You'll see here, or available here, a file called example short, and then your email address, which gives you a copy of a training file that you can have a look at. And this is the name of the project here, and these are the sources. In this case, there's only 2. It's just a little toy file with 2 different sources in it. This is source 1 down here. You can see the text, and you can see it's already been coded for causal claims. So, for example, here, So it's usually out the doorway of the market. So mornings and evenings, it's mostly me. So if I click on that, I'll see what the original claim was. Sarah's out the door early for the market. Mornings and evenings are mostly for me. Well, that's a pretty feeble causal claim. That's a pretty good example. Cut down on the noise. There you go. So why the children? Why it gets less noisy? The children are occupied. The noise is reduced. So that's the key thing to making things quiet in this household. The kids are occupied. So if I could edit that link by clicking on it there, or I can make it a very similar piece of text here. I can highlight it. I can create a link. So it says when the kids are just actually occupied. So say kids occupied, but also when they're not fighting. So two slightly different things. Kids not fighting. I'm actually going to put two causes here to be really advanced. Fighting, and the effect is happiness. The question was about happiness. So Mark is happy. Maybe could be the effect. I might choose to look at other effects that's already been coded here, or I might choose to just make it my own. So I've coded that actually two links. And if I look at the map over here, I can see that there's filters applied. Oops, that's demonstrating something before, so I'll take those off. So we'll see that this is the map so far for all of that coding corresponding to what we can see on the left, and what we just coded over here. Kids not fighting, kids occupied are two reasons why Mark is happy. I've not coded it very well. We could probably argue about that. So you can go on, you can code, you can edit. You can edit not only here, but edit from the map too. So you see it's an interactive map. You can sort of woggle it around, and you can edit the individual links and factors like this, or delete it or change it like this. And while we're looking at the map, there's lots of other things you can do in the map. You can change it to what we used to have in Causal Map 3, which is the print view, which makes won't see much difference here, but makes a more sort of publishable, more journal-like layout. And there's various other different kinds of layout too you can have a look at. And while we're looking at this also, there's a panel called Vignettes, which is an AI-only feature, which gives a quite sophisticated and creative yet accurate narrative version of the map, which is very useful for some people. Don't like looking at the diagrams, they just like the explanation, so it gives a nice explanation of what you can see there. So when you're coding, you're in this panel, and then you can flip through your sources and say, there's another source that I've not coded here, add some more stuff. And also, when you're starting to analyze or further on in your coding, you'll be using this filter panel, which is what I was looking at using before. So we're going to look at both of the sources, source 2 and source 1, and I'm going to apply this filter. I only want to look at failure. So failure has come up. I want to code for guilt. So this is focusing on guilt. This is the reasons why I feel guilty and what happens because of it. But I don't want the stuff about failure, so I can add this exclude factors filter, and we just get the story without this thing about failure. There's just a toy example. There are lots of different filters here for doing lots of different, much more sophisticated things. And the filters themselves, as you can see, as you saw, you can switch them on and off, and you can also drag them around so that the order, which sometimes matters, in this case it doesn't matter, so you can put the filters in the right order. We mentioned already source management, which is a lot easier in Causal Map 4. So as well as a list of all your projects here, you can see a list of all your sources within the project. Source 1 and source 2, I happen to know that's the dad and the mum. So in this sources table, you can directly, which is something new, you can directly edit put it back again, you can directly edit the source metadata columns. You can add metadata columns here, like age, for example, and you can use those characteristics to filter the outputs. And in terms of outputs, you've got not only obviously the map, but you've got also tables of factors and links. You see there's says here there's only 2 links, but of course that's because we've got these filters applied. If we take these filters off, then we'll see that there are lots of links, and you can do lots of things in this table. You can edit the links, you can sort them and present them in different ways, and the same test differences between them, that kind of thing, and same with the factors table. So, and in the tables themselves, as you'd expect, you can sort and filter and move the columns around, all that kind of thing. Now, that's the kind of, oh yes, and a couple more things for what you normally think of as the file menu. This is how you can copy the project and delete all the links and upload different sources of information, all that kind of thing you'd expect here. And here, in this project details screen, you can see lots of details about the project, and you can do sharing. You can see any bookmarks that people have already made here. You can see information about it, that kind of thing. Now, these are all these facilities you've just seen. They're all available for free forever in the free plan. If you want to start upping your game, so the pro plan, the private plan is just the same, but it's private. If you want to do, if you're a professional and you're working with this, you'll probably want things like versioning. So you see here versions, you can do backups and you can restore versions, very important. So you don't want to make mistakes and realize 5 days later you made a mistake 5 days ago. And also you have some other sophisticated things like this pivot table builder, where you can build all kinds of different tables and charts, like for example, gender. Let's have a look at the sources and how many links are involved with each gender, all that kind of thing. Here, that's in the pro plan, which is probably what you'd want if you're a professional using it or a freelancer. If you want to work with a team, then probably you want to do sharing and sharing inside the team. That's something that's in the team plan. Here's where you'd add your collaborators so that you can all work on the same file at the same time. And if you click on the right button, you can actually do like a live presentation. You can actually see other people's links as they get added. That's somewhat similar to, say, Google Docs. By the way, down here we have stuff about this account tab is where you wouldn't normally see all of those subscriptions. Here's where you can look at your subscription information and update it, push it to different license and so forth. AI packages are not available yet, as Gabrielle already mentioned, but they'll be available soon. In terms of help, there's lots of help in the app, and this is, I think, really quite nice. So supposing you're looking at something and think, what's this widget here? I'd like to know what it is. You can press this button and this help drawer slides out and tells you all about this project bar in context. And it works the other way around too. So supposing you say, what's the sources bar? What's the sources bar? So if you see, I clicked on that and it's already highlighted and flashing for me over here. So it shows you which bit of the app it's talking about, which I think is quite useful. Or you can just use this help. You can just scroll through it, read it, find out what all the different bits of the app are doing. You can obviously search here inside the help. And there's also a standalone version of the, which you can't see because it's a different tab, but it opens in a different tab. And then you'll see what we call the Garden of Ideas, which is a massive amount of work in progress, which has a lot of narrative information, pieces of papers, all about causal mapping and why it's useful, how you can do it. And the last section is the standalone version of the help for the app, which is the same information as you'd get if you were clicking around on this blue drawer here, but all in one place where you can read it more conveniently if you like to read help manuals. Some people do. Some people do. I don't, but some people do. What else was I going to say? I think that's it, apart from AI, is it? Gabrielle, is there anything else I'm going to add?
Yeah, why don't you show the different styles of maps, like the interactive, the print?
Yes, well, we did just have a look there at the print and interact a little bit. It's not a terribly good example, this file, because there's not an awful lot of coding in it. But if I look at it's not a terribly large file, but it's got a few, I think maybe 1,000 or something links in it. It's a real life form, which was coded for a real life, now anonymized evaluation multiple years ago. You notice here when I load it up, there's already bookmarks here, something I didn't mention. So when you have, I think, the team, or is it pro version of the plan, you can make bookmarks so that you can record things you've already done and share those links with other people and click on them in order to load up just exactly that view, which you find interesting and which you want to refer to other people to, and which you might want to also record and report exactly how you got that particular table. And so, yes, so this is, so that, yeah, exactly. So this example we were just looking at here, which is rather more complicated. So let's look at a more interesting map. This is upstream influences of something, of well-being. So it's tracing all the way to well-being. You can't see it terribly large there. And we'll use the other kind of formatting, the print formatting, the more sort of journal ready, publication ready formatting. There we can see quite nicely the drivers of well-being saved in that bookmark, so I can come back to it and look at it again in the future and share it with other people. So finally, we'll talk just a little bit about AI. Now, we've created Causal Map 4 to be what we call human first, AI next. So it's kind of and. So we're absolutely fine, people using it 100% human coding, doing your coding just like in the old days, manually coding, going through your source interviews or reports and highlighting different pieces of text and doing that all yourself, because it's great, because you learn an awful lot about the subject, about your interviews while you're doing it. Plus you end up with this amazing set causal data set with all these maps you can get out of it. But we also understand when people say, look, hang on a minute, it's going to take me weeks. And of course it will take, multiple days or conceivably even multiple weeks if you've got maybe 100 or a couple of hundred interviews or reports to code. So yes, there's code with AI. So it's not available. I mean, it's working. We've been using it for months, but it's not available to the public yet. You basically just tweak a couple of things, press a button, and it will code. Normally you'll code a couple of sources just to see how it's going and what you want to tweak. And then after that, then you'll probably code the entire data set, which is going to take a little while. You're going to make a coffee while it's doing that. And then you'll find thousands of links, or maybe even tens of thousands of links in your data set. And then you'll go back and sometimes you want to look at the individual links, think, oh, I want to tweak that. And there are lots of powerful tools here for tweaking multiple or hundreds of links and factors at the same time. Or you might, as we often do, say, well, that's a certain amount of noise, we accept a certain amount of noise, but the overall causal picture, the landscape in people's minds, so to speak, is already visible, so I don't need to do any more. Although normally, of course, you'll check the veracity and the accuracy of the coding, but you might say, I'm now happy having checked maybe 5% or 10% of the links. But that's just one part. So when you've done a lot of causal coding, if you do it, you can do it with or without a code book. And in fact, Gabriela, you could put the little slide up we've got on AI. So you can code with a code book, but you can code also without a code book. If you code without a code book, you'll, which is a really interesting thing to do, then instead of having 40 or 50 or 100 agreed labels, you might have 10,000 or 60,000, as we had recently, slightly different labels which the AI has generated. So you need some techniques to cluster and organize all of those labels, and that's all available there are filters to do just exactly that in the app, which is a really exciting way of working. We just had, I think we won't show the slide, but we just had a piece of work where we coded I think 4,000 pages of central banker speeches from the UK central bankers, looking at how they talk about the economy and how they talk about climate change and how they talk about all of these different things. Oh yes, thank you. This is a particular focus just on climate change. So there's all kinds of really interesting things you can do to zoom in and zoom out and compare decades and look at individual themes and look at systems change in the sense of system in people's heads, how the central bankers thinking very differently as they do from 3 decades ago to how they think now. And that's something that's relatively easy to do with AI help. There's a couple more things you can do with AI. The vignettes I mentioned, which is really cool. So you can, some people love maps and some people don't. So if you press the vignette button, according to the instructions you give it, you can basically get a sophisticated and accurate description of the map. But the AI, when it's creating the description, also knows who said what, and it can build typical sources and tell the story for a particular source. So it can basically write a page of the report for you, zooming in the details of the map and explaining what's happening using the same language, but possibly simpler language. That's an extremely useful thing that saves a lot of time. And I think finally, there's a button in the app called AI Answers, which has got nothing to do with causal mapping, which just says, well, we've got this data set here, we've got these however many 500 speeches. So we'll just use just like lots of other apps out there, AI Lives and some other ones, you can just use it as a kind of a smart kind of ChatGPT that's kind of organized for you. It goes through each and every speech, works out which might be relevant, looks at the relevant ones, then answer the questions. So you can answer questions like, do the central bankers ever mention the Soviet Union or something like that? Or if they do, in what context do they mention it, and how do they report it as influencing something else? Any question you want to ask, which is answerable by looking at the text, pretty much you can get answered with the AI Answers. It's just a useful extra button which people asked for, which has nothing to do with causal mapping, but sometimes it can save you a lot of time having to kind of extract all your text and put it back into some different app. I think that's what I was going to say, what we were going to say. So there's a few questions.
Yes, we have 3 questions in the chat already. So Ludovico first asked,
Hi,
let's
Ludovico.
say let's say you code repetitively in one statement. A person makes the same causal claim twice. Can you filter by statement? Also, how effective is AI in coding in these instances? For example, does it identify repetitive statements and code once?
Yes, right. That's, yes, very good question. So, I mean, people say, oh, it's a good question, but it is a good question. And it's sort of, if you're used to coding manually, you'll probably find AI coding at the same time incredibly amazing because it's so fast, but also really irritating because it perhaps does it a different way from the way that you're used to doing it. So yes, by default, it will code everything. I mean, you can change the instructions because you have a whole set of instructions, just like you would for an assistant. So please do it like this and not like this. Please focus on that, ignore this stuff. And you have to experiment with those instructions until it's doing what you want. But yeah, by default, it will code multiple times, as we saw, in fact, in the interview about the children, that it was coming up the same sort of information, maybe repeated several times by the same speaker. Personally, I think that's a good default setting. So you just get the same thing coded several times, not the end of the world, but you might find you want to instruct it more severely to not do it. And as it codes different sizes of chunks at a time, depending on what you set, yes, it's possible that it will code on page 1, something that's on page 7 comes up again and it's coding it separately. So you think, oh, I wish it had remembered it coded on page 1 and it doesn't. So that's something you'd have to address, which a human ideally, yeah, might come to page 7 and say, oh, the person said that already, and my coding protocol, which I agreed with myself, is that I wouldn't code it twice, so I don't, whereas the AI would. So that's something that you'd have to think about. So
Yeah.
yes,
Just going back to his question about the statement, if you can filter by statement.
oh yes.
Yeah, in Causal Map 4, we don't have the concept of statements anymore. It's just split by source. So if you want to look at a specific part of the text, you will need to filter by source and look at that section.
Yeah, but if
Yeah.
if your data is semi-structured in the sense that you have maybe question 1, question 2, question 3, like as headings in the text, then that's fine. Then you can, in the sources tab, there's a special little box where you can say, what do your headings look like? So every time it says question, then a number, it will then internally split the file into statements, so you can do things like show me only the text for question 3, or don't show me everything except the answers to question 9 because question 9 is stupid, or whatever. So you can do that, but it's much smoother, I think, than in Causal Map 3, because you're basically just thinking source by source, but you can virtually split into statements for doing that kind of thing. And then Ludovic also asks about same distance upload of the images. I think you'll probably find that the map works just fine now like that, but it probably makes sense to, if you start getting those kinds of problems you're talking about, then let us know and we'll have a look. But I think it probably should be standardized now, and there's a copy to clipboard button here. So you don't have to copy the file in some other way. You can just copy directly to the clipboard and then paste it into your report or whatever.
Lovely.
Yeah. Yes, and then the AI coding feature, it will be available early in the new year, but we're not quite sure exactly what. And there may be different levels, because some of the things, surprisingly, the coding isn't such a difficult thing to share. Sharing some of the more advanced filters is a little bit more demanding, and so we're just a question of saying how many people are going to get using it, what will the price be, etc. But the AI coding, especially using a code book, that'll be available probably in January or February at the latest of the coming year.
Right. One more question from Joseph. Hi, Joseph. With the new dynamic output maps, as opposed to the static ones, what format do those come in, and what can the viewer see about the factors?
Right, yeah. So when you want to paste them into a report, the simplest thing is just to paste them into a report. So if you have interactive set like this, then you can move things around, and you can maybe say, I don't like that layout, I want to have a slightly different layout, so I want to put this over here or something. Then you can take that screenshot and paste it into your report just the way you like it, but then it's a static image in the report. Yeah. But if you said, oh, this is so great, I want my client to play with this, then you can save a bookmark, and when you do that, I'll do it right now. It's always good practice to have the description. So for launch, just so I can remember. So I've got a note so I can remember where that bookmark came from. This pops up, and you can copy the link. You can copy the image. It's available here if I click on it. And you can send that link then to your client, but then the file has to either be public, or you have to have shared it explicitly with them, which you can do on a team plan, and they can then enter the app just like you're doing, maybe read only, and they can then filter and move the map around themselves. Does that answer your question, Joseph?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Are there any more questions? If people could just, like, if you're interested, just put your hand up or tap it in the chat, or otherwise we've taken 45 minutes of your lunchtime if it's a late lunch, and we can leave it at that.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to add the links again here in the chat. So if anyone is interested in anything that we've shared today, feel free to just click on the link and browse. And Causal Map, as we mentioned before, is free for public projects. So if you want to just try it out, you can just click on the link and sign up to Causal Map now. And the app will create an example file for you to play around, just like this one that Steve is at the moment. And just let us know if you have any feedback or anything that you want to talk about. We're always opening our emails and social media as well.
Yes, also, it's very new, so if you do find a bug, which you might, then please just let us know, and we should be able to fix it really quickly. And finally, just a shout out to in that amazing list of links that Gabriella just posted, there is a mailing list to sign up to subsequent free sessions like this one, we will have a much more interactive, and people could say like a little masterclass. So I've been making maps in this way, but I'd like to know how to make them in that way, or there's a problem I have here, how can I do X, Y, and Z? Normally there's an answer, so we'll have like a sort of troubleshooting sessions, probably starting possibly in December or perhaps in the new year. Great. Okay, so thanks very much for being with us for the launch of Causal Map 4, which we're very excited about, and we look forward to interacting with you on social media or via email or however else. And have a good day, everybody. Gabriele?
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, just thank you and enjoy Causal Map.
Cheers then. Bye, everybody.
All right.